Chapter 15, Forces of Evil. Hold on, I'm getting you out! Dimly, Dawn heard a voice. Thorns dug into her flesh, but then, miraculously, the vines released her. She felt them slide out of her mouth. Finally, she was able to breathe. She gasped for air, falling to her knees and panting. Whoa, what happened? Philippa said. You were stuck in that big old hedge. Listen, just focus on breathing. Samson licked her face again, trying to revive her. Good boy, Dawn rasped through her scratchy throat, patting his head in thanks. Dog licks had healing powers, she decided. I don't know what happened, Dawn said. That storm came out of nowhere, and then the maze attacked me. Philippa now looked even more worried. What storm? Dawn looked up. Just like the other day when the ravens had chased her, the skies were clear and sunny. There was no storm. She glanced at the hedge that had attacked her, but it looked like an ordinary rosebush now. Well, I believe you, Philippa said. When I found you, those vines were wrapped around you. Something is definitely going on. Philippa walked over and picked up from the ground a vine that had been severed in the struggle. Look, I know you're not telling me everything, Philippa went on, so spit it out. You're right, Dawn confessed, unable to keep the secret anymore. But it's pretty crazy. I'm not sure you're going to believe me. Well, a few minutes ago, I didn't think roses could come alive and attack you either, Philippa said. Those suckers had a pretty good hold on you, she continued. We had to pull them off. They were even down your throat. I can't really explain that, so give it a shot. Fine, Dawn said, but let's get out of here first. Agreed, Philippa said. But, you were right. I'm pretty lost now. Know the way out? Dawn shook her head. I told you. Her stomach twisted. But then Samson barked and grabbed Philippa's sleeve in his teeth. What is it, boy? Philippa asked. What's he trying to tell you? Dawn asked. Philippa brightened as he tugged her more insistently. We might be lost, Philippa said, but Samson knows the way out. Let's go. So what's this crazy thing you have to tell me? Philippa inquired. Her words hung thick in the air. The sun was moving down, signaling that it was late afternoon. Dawn sat next to Philippa on a stone bench outside the rose garden. It still loomed over them with its towering hedges, however. Samson and his strong nose had rescued them from the maze. Despite the beauty of the roses, all Dawn could think about were the thorns buried under her inviting petals, and their sickly sweet perfume. It's like a spell designed to lure you in, she thought, like the voice from the spinning wheel. Okay, but you have to promise you won't think I'm making things up, Dawn said, like what happened at school when nobody believed me about Leah. Philippa giggled. Remember, even then I believed you. Good point, Dawn agreed, thinking of how Philippa had her back when none of the other kids in Castletown did. But what I tell you stays between us, like a secret. Just tell me already, Philippa said with a roll of her eyes. Dawn took a deep breath, then told Philippa everything. About finding the spinning wheel in the shed and pricking her finger, the green flames erupting out of it, and the dark fairy offering to help her get revenge on Leah. So, let me get this straight, Philippa said, starting to look freaked out. You made a deal with a dark fairy named Maleficent, and you thought that was a good idea. Wow. Like, even in my books, that would be a super bad idea, and they're just fiction. This is real. Right. I know it's hard to understand, Dawn said, feeling regret pool in her heart like a deep, dark lake. I was so upset by what Leah did to me, and then seeing all the posts from her birthday made it worse. Maleficent promised to teach Leah a lesson in exchange for my returning the spinning wheel to her. But now it's starting to backfire. I mean, the first day, when Leah and everyone fell asleep in class and got sent home, was kind of awesome, Dawn said, smiling at the memory. It felt good to be vindicated. Philippa smirked. Yeah, that was pretty great. Leah acts all nice, but really she's a bully. Even the other kids are scared of her. Well, you did try to warn me about her, Dawn said, but I didn't listen. Philippa shrugged. Leah puts on such a good act that it's hard to see through it. Dawn smiled, but then grew more solemn. But now Leah's still sick, and the curse is growing stronger. At first it was just our class, but now anyone I talk to or come into contact with falls asleep. As soon as I open my mouth, they start snoring away on their feet. Like in the drugstore? Philippa asked with a frown. Yep, exactly, Dawn said with a shudder. That's why I ran away like that. You see, I was worried about making more people sick, but for some reason, you're the only one not affected by it. So now I'm thinking it's because you're my friend, Philippa finished. At least, you were my friend, Dawn said, feeling tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Before I told you I made a deal with a dark fairy. Philippa frowned again. What do you mean? Well, I'm pretty sure after that confession, Dawn lamented, you're not gonna want to be my friend, gonna be friends anymore. What? Are you kidding? Philippa said. I'm going to help you. Wait, you are? Dawn asked in surprise. You're not freaked out? I mean, I'm a little freaked out, Philippa admitted, but then excitement lit up her face. But this is awesome. I knew magic was real. It's just like in my books. Woof! Samson barked and trotted over. Grass clung to his white fur, staining it green. He had Dawn's sunglasses in his wet mouth. He nosed them into Dawn's hand. How are you excited? Dawn asked. A dark fairy, Philippa said. An evil curse, a spinning wheel that's got magic powers. Philippa started pacing around, barely able to contain herself. I mean, I grew up hearing the tales about Castletown being haunted, she said, and strange things happening here, especially in the dark forest. That's why I love reading fantasy books so much. Anyway, I always knew the stories were true, but nobody believed me. They said they're just made up to scare kids. So crazy. But I was right. So, this is a good thing? Dawn said, scratching her head in confusion. Well, not exactly, Philippa said. Now that I think about it more, what you did was probably a really bad idea. What do you mean? Dawn asked. Based on my books, fairies can trick you, Philippa explained. They can't be trusted, and their curses aren't easily broken, especially dark fairies. Yeah, that's what I was worried about, Dawn said, swallowing hard. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She couldn't hold them back this time. She never felt so lost, not even when her parents sent her away. Samson licked her face, smothering her with dog kisses and trying to cheer her up. It helped, but only a little. What am I going to do? Dawn cried. All I wanted was to teach Leah a lesson, but look where that got me. If the dark fairy is so powerful, Philippa said, thinking it over, then why doesn't she just take the spinning wheel back for herself? Because she can't, Dawn explained, thinking back to that fateful day in the shed and the exchange with Maleficent. The owner was to give it back to her willingly. Right, protection spells, Philippa said. Those are all over my books. Have you tried to give it back to her yet? Wouldn't that stop the curse? Maybe, Dawn said, but my aunt's auctioned it off already. It turns out that it's really valuable. The buyer is coming to the shop tomorrow, and even if I wanted to take it, they locked it up in the safe where they keep prized antiques. Okay, got it, Philippa said. Plus, based on my books, giving fairies objects of power is probably a bad idea. Someone hid the wheel and put protection spells on it for a reason. Dawn didn't like the sound of that. What do you mean? If her power is tied to the spinning wheel, then it could make her even more powerful, Philippa said. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, Dawn said. There must be a reason she wants it so badly. She said losing it weakened her powers. That's what I was afraid of, Philippa agreed. And dark fairies don't use their powers for good. Dawn felt the tears start welling up from her eyes again. It's all my fault. I can't give her the wheel, but if I don't, then she won't lift the curse or leave me alone. Philippa patted her back. Look, we can fix this. I'm going to help you. But how? Dawn said between ugly sobs. Where did this all start? Philippa said. At the antique shop, Dawn sniffled, wiping away her tears. Samson let out a concerned whine and looked at her face. In the shed out back, where I found the spinning wheel. Philippa started again, then turned back. Well, aren't you coming? Coming? Dawn sniffled, not budging from the bench. She felt hopeless. But Philippa grabbed her arm and tugged her up, while Samson barked his encouragement. She dragged Dawn over to their bikes. To spindles and things, of course, Philippa said, hopping on her bike and pointing it toward the gravel driveway. Maybe there's a clue in that shed that can tell us more about what caused this to happen. Or more importantly, who caused it. That made Dawn feel afraid again. She grabbed her bike. You mean the dark fairy? Philippa nodded. Maleficent. Suddenly, ravens burst out of the forest and swarmed overhead, blackening out the sun for a moment and casting them into shadow. Caw, caw! It was an unkindness Dawn remembered her aunts telling her. Were the birds listening to them, spying on them for the dark fairy even? But this could be really dangerous, Dawn said, remembering the fairy's condescending tone and all the nightmares and hauntings since then. Sure you want to help me? Yep, you're my friend, Philippa said in a firm voice. Plus, this is the only way we can figure out how to make her stop, right? Dawn nodded, pulling on her sunglasses to protect others from her. Then she pedaled after her friend. She felt a stirring hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. This was still a terrible situation, and she had no idea how they were going to fix it. But somehow, not having to deal with it alone made it less scary. Samson loped after them as always. The ravens followed like a permanent shadow. Caw, caw! Dawn glanced back at Samson, wondering why he wasn't chasing the birds. Then she realized even he looked afraid.